You folks know that I've tried to keep track of what's going on in other parts of the world. I've been very bad at it. One of the parts of the world that I've cared about a lot is Nigeria. Nigeria is home to one of the world's biggest and most persecuted Christian populations on earth. I've been talking about them a lot on my morning live stream. And recently, an article was written about the Nigerian context as an example, but the African context more broadly. The article was like this. It was called "To Stop Africa's Bleeding: The Pentalateral Solution for the People Called Methodists." Is written by Sègbégnon Gnonhossou. I said it wrong. He is being very polite with me in my Oki accent. Um, we're going to have a conversation today about the Methodist faith, how it was designed, and how it can and should transform people to engage on the global stage. This is a conversation that is fraught because there's all kinds of accusations of racism that can come in whenever white people are trying to discern what black people should be doing wherever they are. I'm not at all interested in that. I just think I'm a global Methodist elder. We're going to have a global denomination. We're going to have people from African nations telling us how we ought to live. And we have to get ready for that. We proud Americans, turns out, are not perfect. And we're going to hear about that from African brothers, Asian brothers. And we're also going to have to learn to be comfortable with trying to understand other contexts and other cultures, and to figure out how much of what we believe is based on the Bible and how much of it is just based on our cultural assumptions and maybe even some bigotries we have. So anyway, if this is your first time listening to me, I'm a conservative. I don't do the whole oppression Olympics thing. I do the we're all brothers and sisters in Christ thing. And in order to do that well, we just need to talk to people from other parts of the world. So Sègbégnon, you're going to be able to tell he is not born in America, although he has taught in America, and he is a John Wesley Fellow alongside many American Methodists. He's native born from Benin, which is a small coastal country in Western Africa that borders Nigeria. But he and I together are going to be looking at Nigeria, looking at the Bible, looking at Christian history, looking at Methodist history, and figuring out maybe what this foundation is that we're building on for a future where Methodism can once again spread scriptural holiness across the globe. So we've already talked privately. Sègbégnon is on the same page as me, and now I'm ready to introduce you to him. This is Dr. Gnonhossou. Thank you for joining me today, brother.
Thank you, Reverend Rickman, and it's my pleasure to be here.
You will call me Jeffrey from now on. I will call you Sègbégnon. You will pretend that I'm saying it correctly. Thank you. And I think it would be helpful to begin with by just rehearsing the argument of your article that you wrote in Firebrand. I'm going to have it pulled up here, and I will lay out what I understood your case to be. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty of it. But I have 2 pages displayed here, and I know the writing is kind of small. Forgive me. But on the left page, I have what I think is the key quote: "The Wesley's discipleship method addresses human beings at both levels of the soul." There's the public level and the hidden man of the heart. Considering Henderson's insights, he's the author that we're going to look at his book here in a second. Wesleyan discipleship offers a pentalateral for Methodists. It's on 5 different levels it engages us. Societies, that's the first level, positively affect the human mind. The class affects human behaviors. The band affects human affections and emotions. The select society affects governance or leadership vocation. And the penitent band affects people's willpower by restoring and habilitating it back to God's design. What I understood your case to be is that just like in America, all around the world, including African nations, Methodism is a shadow of its former self. It is no longer engaging in these 5 levels of reforming the habitus of the individual. They're still in the flesh, and because of that, they're not living as they ought. So you are issuing a call for Methodists around the world to reclaim the pentalateral formation of discipleship. How badly did I misunderstand your thoughts?
No, you understood it very well. That's what I intended to communicate, and I'm glad that you are able to reiterate that, and it makes me feel that I wrote clearly.
It
My reading actually came from the standpoint of a participant in Methodism in both, in both continents. And I know that, with the various, I mean, with relative differences, on both continents, yeah, we still have some laundry work to do. Yeah, along those lines.
well, it feels to me it has felt to me as though in America, Methodism as a tradition has fallen apart and, doesn't mean much, has not been transformative for some time. In some non-American contexts, I have been more encouraged. Say in Korea, South Korea, they still engage in early morning prayer meetings. It seems to me that in northern Nigeria, Methodists are still willing to bleed and die for the faith. These are marks of discipleship that are costly and I think are pleasing to the Lord that we do not see generally in America. Does it seem to you as though African Methodism, broadly speaking, is of the same quality to American Methodism? Or do you think that it is potentially of a higher quality? That's well, I don't know. Surely you wouldn't want to say that, but do you think that the quality of African Methodism is more demanding for disciples than in America, or do you think that both cultures or both continents have created an easier form of Methodism than was originally intended?
Mhm. Well, that's a very good question. That's why I used the word relative earlier. So
Relative.
definitely there are qualities in American Methodism that that African Methodism have resolved, and they are more vital in those areas, like especially in the areas of um, vitality in worship contests, and then in the witnessing, the evangelism and planting churches. There are African initiatives that are very much, attractive, more attractive than what I have experienced here in the US. So definitely there are those experiences of vitality that are also ingrained in our, in our African identity and structure and history, especially the history of Methodism in the African continent, especially in that area that I am part of, the larger West African area. So um, those are things that you find in a lot of African among a lot of African Methodists that I missed in American Methodism. But speaking about that, I also need to say that it's not all of the African Methodists that share the vitality of evangelism, prayer, and church planting. There are areas where those things are also as dead as you can find in American Christianity.
Yeah, let me share this quote from your article. It was just on the second page there.
Yeah.
Throughout Africa, the branches of Christianity showing vibrancy gather people in great numbers. Pursuit of mass Christianity without the power to live out Christianity's well known expectations has become the currency. I would have said the norm. I think that's what you mean.
Oh
African
yeah.
Methodists, especially those seeking renewal or revival, tend to imitate this mass based Christianity. They usually back mass evangelism, with Whitfield coaching Wesley into field preaching. Sorely absent are the other layers of Wesley's pentalateralism in discipling Methodists toward Christ likeness. In the regions where Methodism is alive and well, mass Christianity predominates more than disciplined class and band connectional discipleship. So, of course, you're
Yes.
speaking broadly. I'm sure there are exceptions, but you're saying broadly in the African context, Africans have not necessarily always maintained the high standards of Methodism better than Americans.
Yes. Yes, and that's I mean that's one key difference that I tend to point out. Yeah, you have vitality, as you said earlier, evangelism. These things have the cultural rootedness to it, and I mean cultural in terms of contemporary culture being influenced by Pentecostal charismatic Christianity, the African own, the religious sensitivity that meet the gospel, and then the gospel fine tune and liberate. And I mean, when people experience salvation, the cultural vitality just is there to be able to make salvation known. Regretfully, the closer work, all right, the closer work to shape or to allow windows of grace for people to experience, deeper transformation is lacking. Is Even when you have people who are disaffected by the state of Methodism and want renewal, when you analyze even those who happen to separate from the local initiatives of African Christianity that are separated from Methodism, when they separate, yeah, it's the Whitfieldian or the mass Christianity that is reproduced. And it's good for a few years, and then the same routine of needing to do mass revival again comes around in the corner, and then there is a repetition of that. So that's what I'm cautioning about in that quote that you just brought up.
Yeah, George Whitfield was known to be the guy that originally coaxed John Wesley into field preaching. He was a Calvinist. The two of them had respect for one another, even as they vehemently disagreed with one another. My favorite quote from Whitfield about John Wesley was, "Do you think you'll see him in heaven?" And he said, "No. I think he's going to be too much further close to the throne of grace that I can't even see him," which was a very gracious thing to say. But with respect
That's
to the
right.
mode of discipleship that they did, George Whitfield acknowledged that the ones that he awakened in the faith were what he called a rope of sand, fell apart whenever he left, that it was only those who came under the umbrella of John Wesley's Methodist societies and were put into this pentalateral system that were
Yeah.
able to maintain and grow in the faith. So as you talk about the Whitfieldian mode being the predominant mode in Africa, that's really a tragedy because what it implies is that it does not have staying power. It requires constant um, revival, beginner level milk,
Yeah.
not meat, not serious discipleship. And so, would it be right for me to infer that, largely speaking, African, probably not just Methodism, African Christianity is largely as anemic and less underdeveloped as modern American Christianity is?
Um, Yeah, usually generalization is a bad thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
But when you are in context where I mean, this is the case, yeah, I cannot help but name it, and my experience in the field and even discussing with friends who are at the forefront of renewal, earlier in August, I was I was in Benin leading a seminar, and that's not just a seminar among Methodists, but very interdenominational, and conversations are around that, right? So there is a sense that the deeper work is lacking in African Christianity in general. But there are exceptions, and I don't want to negate or to not be cautious about exceptional cases. Yeah.
Well, could we spend a couple minutes on perhaps an exceptional case or two that you know about in the African context where discipleship is done with rigor?
Well, yeah. So I don't want to be but the exceptional cases that I know is one in which we are building on in our work in Benin. So my dad is still alive, and he's more than 112 years old today. And
Your father is
but
over 112 years old.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah, he still remembers, and then he still remembers the times when he joined the Methodist in Benin. He joined a very small group of people living as in a classical Wesleyan class meeting model. There was no church. It's just in a in an environment where actually you have African religious tradition surrounding them in a village. So the dominant religious practice was the African practice of religion. So he joined that class, very small class. He recalled that there were about 8 to 10 people at the time still. But after a while, because they will come there to pray, and there was a class leader, it was the religious people who asked them to leave because what they come to do disturbs their religious apparatus. I mean, their religious structure in the
Mhm.
in the village. Um, so he recalls that the argument sent to them to kick them out of the area was that every time that they gather, that there is some kind of fire in the in the religious altars, and that they don't want them in the village anymore.
Mm.
So and my dad and my mom, until we had a full house, I mean, armed robbery in our house, they
Mm.
kept a pile of what we call in our language chikiti. Chikiti is a local gun. My local language is gun, but it is the local linguistic transformation of the Wesleyan practice of being ticketed, right? When people
Okay.
come to the class meeting, they are ticketed. That was in my country, and that was the bedrock of Methodism, right? So where there is a temple, the Methodist Church temple in that village now, uh, that temple was built as a constellation of several of those type of small groups in the village, right? And it took 19 years. My dad recalled that they have been in that area already doing Christianity for 19 years before they ever built the worship place where I was born into,
Mm.
right? So what we are trying to do now is to build on that heritage of people being gathered in small group of holistic, right, solidarity, um, where they do Christian life, right? And they take care of their souls as the Wesleyan ethos will have it, and But the thing is that when people understand, they resonate with it, right? When they understand the importance of small group, deeper work, and then outward testimony, they
Mhm.
understand, they connect with it because of our background, our cultural and religious background, that is so much in line with it. So
Mhm.
I know that that's a model that a ministry called like Village Church Planting is using. And when I discuss with another colleagues in Benin about their church planting model, that's what they are using. I'm also trained in a process called community health education or community health evangelism. That's the structure that is being used. It's not very popular and it's difficult to implement in order to in order to have veteran pastors who are not complete who are disconnected from that method, that modality, espouse that. But it existed in the past, and it is returning now.
So, there was a book that came out, I don't know, 40 years ago in America, maybe 50, called The Methodist Riots. And it follows Charles Wesley through several of the early years of the Methodist revival and shows how badly received Methodism was, very similar to what you described in the context of Benin, where when Methodists would hold society meetings and gatherings, that other local religious figures took offense to it and often mobilized people against it. And that is a sign of authentic Methodism in that it disturbs the religious establishment that is more content with the status quo. As I hear you talking about the heritage of Methodism in Benin, I can't help but draw connections between how it developed in Great Britain and America. The thing I find myself wondering, in America, we have all kinds of church planting, revitalization efforts going on, and they will often say that they are utilizing a similar model to early Methodism. But I cannot help but notice that the standard of rigor is much lower, the standard of commitment is much lower, that the groups are not nearly so, I keep using the word rigorous. They're not nearly so exacting and methodical about identifying and removing sin from people's lives. They're more reluctant to have anything resembling the the general rules, specific things that we do not do, specific things that we do, any kind of baseline requirement of daily disciplines. Uh, I haven't seen pretty much anything in the American context that approximates the rigorous character of early Methodism in the days of revival. I've seen many churches that talk as though they have, but then when you look at the baseline level of spiritual maturity, it's still quite low. I wonder,
Yeah.
in Africa, do you think that the efforts at reviving the old practices are more successful, or do you notice that it is perhaps as difficult to revive those older practices today?
Well, yeah, all the practices are difficult to bring to be brought back. So it's especially when like in the African context, when you have people who have the garb of authority, and they are not in that vision, they don't share in that vision. African members of those churches are more considerate of those who are officially in charge of the church, and so it makes it difficult to implement those structures. um, in the American context, as far as I have lived here, what I understood is that I mean, there are cultural particularities that makes it also very difficult to implement. I remember I was part of an alpha group, an alpha model of evangelism.
Mhm.
Do you know the
Oh,
alpha
Alpha,
program?
yes, I'm very familiar with Alpha.
Yeah, yeah. So we finished alpha program and we wanted to introduce the people who are committing to Jesus, following the Alpha course. And in our leadership, we were discussing about what program, what post-Alpha, discipleship program
Hmm.
were supposed to use. And that was my first time to start getting into the cultural particularities of discipleship in America. So our
Hmm.
discussion about the Wesleyan covenants, all right. So finally we had to put it aside because it's demanding, too transparent. Our to me it was okay. So if we don't do that, then what?
Hmm.
What to use to disciple people? But over time I understood, the level of individualism, the level of isolation, and it requires a very slow work in order to have people buying into the process. In Africa, the difficulty to implement this is due to the people in authority who will not, because they were not educated, trained as pastor in that method, in that mode. So they even if they want to, they don't know how to, right? They don't know even what it is. So then the people who will have picked up the fire. I mean, I'm sure that when African people are led um, into the process, they will catch it because people are wired, and people level of loving Jesus is only hindered by the quality of leadership and the quality of level of leader discipleship that the leaders will take them into. I think that's an essential hindrance in the African context. But in the
Your
American
words,
context,
your words
yeah,
make sense to me, but I'm lacking in understanding. Surely, whenever Methodist missionaries brought the Methodist way to Africa to begin with,
yes.
African leaders were just as ignorant of the Methodist way as they are today, and yet they were able to promote that system ably whenever it was handed off to them. Is it your belief that African leadership could do it just the same today if they would consider themselves learners again? Or do you think that perhaps there is something else at play that is keeping leaders from going back to that model?
Oh, well, the most of the curriculum of training ministers have been lacking
Okay,
in
yeah,
the
the curriculum.
Wesleyan, yeah, in the Wesleyan method.
Mhm,
Uh, so the early catching of the fire was due to the African background, the African cultural background, as I explained in my article,
mhm,
and the fact that early Methodist trainers train people, right, as disciple makers in the Wesleyan method.
mhm,
Today, in most African theological, seminaries or Bible schools, people can finish, there are people who can finish, right, their theological education, be ordained as pastor, and they have not been trained in that method, right, in that approach to evangelizing, to planting churches, and to lead congregations. So that's a big hindrance because members come under their leadership and then they do Christianity to the level presented by the leaders, and that's a current problem in Africa. Early African pastors, evangelists who took the mantle of leadership from the Methodist missionaries who came to
mhm,
West Africa, they were trained in that, in those. In fact, I saw the other day in 1920, right? So up until 1920, people were still being trained in that method in my country because I saw the curriculum as I was reading, a historical article the other day. But somehow it disappeared. A lot of pastors will say today that they are not trained in that method, and that's a big problem in Africa today.
Yeah, the method was clearly great. There's a quote from G.K. Chesterton, an Englishman, a while back. He says, "The faith of Christ was not found ineffective and abandoned. It was found difficult and not tried." I just butchered it. He said it a little better than me, but it seems to me that the early Methodist model worked perfectly. But yes, when the Sunday school movement came about, when Methodism became respectable, we simply stopped doing the things that worked. And the case you're making makes sense to me, that whenever the leadership no longer is able to train people in a certain model, then of course that model will not go well. I'm not aware of any institution even now training people in the early Methodist model of making discipleship. I think one of the key characteristics of early Methodist discipleship is quality control, is removing disorderly walkers and identifying people who are not repenting of their faith and dismissing them from the covenant community. Can we have Methodism without quality control?
Well, I'm a bit cautious about that. That's why I put the overall structure, pentalateral, in my article. I think the word dismissing people is a bit has been. I know that Wesley implemented these kind of disciplines in societies and in his system, but it can be looked upon today as too legalistic. But as I try to understand Wesley in his overall, he was not passionate about dismissing people. So I understand that uh, some of our passion can lead to that, right? We can lean into legalism such that we are willing and we are like one person told me one day, we are fruit inspectors, right?
Mhm,
like
mhm.
we have policing, the lives of people. I think considering Wesley's overall system, he was concerned about, right, creating a platform where people who have been, who have, I mean, backsliding can be offered the possibility of returning, right?
Mhm.
Of being coached back into the faith. Uh, so the expression quality control can be too controlling for people, and we don't want people to feel like they are in a police station or but we do want to care for people, and and if they need assistance in order to catch the level of the Spirit of Jesus that they are invited into, in fact, that we are all created, to be in the image of God, then they will find, partners here. They will find, journey fellows here. So we want to be able to create that kind of structure, and then those who want to be able to actually guide other people, that will be the select society, and they need to come, because once a pastor is already leading people like up to 150 in order to provide deeper level care, that pastor cannot. So that's why we have this system of raising class leaders and actually train them specifically. Yeah, so if you mean that, yes, that is also lacking in African Christianity, right? So quality coaching, I would say, or striving for quality, or searching for quality, implementing a place where people see and experience that God's image is being restored, and that work is continuously pursued here. Yeah, yeah. So at least, I mean, um, at the level of training people, or even at the level of availability of material of training people, I see that those materials are more in America than in Benin. And that will be another layer of my particular contest, because we are a French-speaking country, or we
Mhm.
later became a French-speaking country. So Benin Christianity, or Benin Methodism, got closer to French Protestantism, which is by and large a Reformed Protestantism. And so Wesleyan material are lacking, even in terms of availability. But I
Sure.
see those materials, yeah, but I see those materials here so all English-speaking Methodists, if they are lacking in those materials, in those methods, that would be another problem. And that's why I was a little bit taken aback by what was happening in Nigeria,
Yeah.
because they have what it takes, the historical material, the contemporary material, in order to be able to reorient, right, discipleship among the people called Methodists.
Well, let me use that as a segue into talking about Nigeria a little bit. And before I do that, this is the book that both Sègbégnon and I have read, that he cites in his article by Michael Henderson, and it lays out the lateral mode of discipleship that early Methodism was synonymous with for a time. He kind of shows how those things interact. And then the other work that's really informed how I have understood Sébignon's work is The Patient Ferment of the Early Church by Alan Kreider. I talk about that all the time. He talks about how in the early church, there was a concern with reforming the character of an individual before they ever initiated them into the church. The Latin term was the habitus, which of course is where we get habit. But the notion of Sébignon's article is that because the Methodist tradition has been so anemic broadly across the world, and specifically in Nigeria, you've had people who are Methodist Christians and yet have engaged in violence, not just generally in the North. You don't see Christian versus Muslim violence, but you have seen in Nigeria and within Methodism, United Methodist versus Global Methodist violence. And so I don't have a quote here from the article, but it is quite explicit that if Methodism had maintained a robust form and they were making authentic disciples in the mode that they originally did, that we would not be seeing this violence among the people called Methodists right now. So I sent it to a couple Nigerians. They received it well. They disagreed with that conclusion, and we can talk about some of those reasons there. But if you've been listening to the conversation thus far and going, okay, how do we know that it's more anemic, that it's been less transformative? I think one of the primary arguments you would make is if they are engaging in violence, they are not the same kind of Methodists that we used to make. Is that something you'd feel comfortable saying?
I will say so. I will say
Okay.
so. Because to be violent in general, I know that there can be, you know, pro Anabaptist argument, and then a non-Anabaptist argument. That's a general, a larger conversations. I mean, that can lead to larger conversations across the theological traditions and denominational, particularities. But I will not be, I will be surprised that, people who are within the fold of Methodism and leaving the particulars of the Methodist faith will be suddenly violent toward each other. I don't read I don't read Methodism that way. So that the um, some of the violence that have been described, I have been given some of them have been spontaneous, but some of them have been also planned, scheduled. To me, it's just difficult for me to fathom or to think that people who are in the process of discipleship and they are in the mode of discipleship for years will suddenly burst into violence toward each other that way. So, but I'm very much open to if you can share with me what argument or what explanation they have given. I'm not living in the Nigerian context. I have written as someone who is reading from afar, uh, but also know that that was a counter witness to Christian faith, because if there is a violence we should be concerned about in Nigeria, it will be the Christian versus Muslim violence that we all cry about and pray about and so forth. But to have that within Methodism, it's to me, it's a violation of the Wesleyan ethos.
Well, let me tell you how I've interpreted the situation. And you've seen the different interviews that I've done of different Africans, and in particular in Nigeria. I believe the first Nigerian I interviewed was Ande Emmanuel, who is now a bishop in the United Methodist Church. At that point, he
Yes.
was the head of the United Methodist Africa Forum. Um, After watching his behavior for a few years, I'm of the mind that he is a malign and demonic individual. And I say that publicly and without remorse. I've watched him for a long time. I believe that he has intentionally mobilized other United Methodists in Nigeria to be violent against Global Methodists, and I do not think that the Global Methodists have anyone of equal. I think there are people within the Global Methodist Church in Nigeria who have vain ambition and pride and have a tribal mindset. I have seen some of that. I have not seen anyone who has the energy or drive to plan attacks and lie and mobilize the government for their own gain the way that Andy Emanuel has. So the way that I have read developments in Nigeria is that you have a United Methodist bishop who has been given a lot of money and authority, who without shame has mobilized young men and women to attack um, a college campus at one point whenever the Global Methodist Church was having a gathering. You've also had uh, unfortunate tribal realities uh, get demarcated in this way. So in Bishop Johanna's hometown, Mungadoso, I think was its name, you had two different tribes in the area, one associated with Johanna, and then one associated with the United Methodist Church. None of them could use the church building because of the legal proceedings, and yet their heartstrings were drawn to that building during Christmas time. Global Methodists came in to worship. United Methodists busted the door down and started shooting and attacking. Homes were burned down. Most unfortunate, but also understandable whenever there are tribal realities, whenever you have an antagonist from the United Methodist Church who is unscrupulous, one of their bishops. I do not think Global Methodist bishops have at all behaved the same way as Andy Emmanuel. So, I saying all that, I don't think you're wrong necessarily. I do think you're right that fully sanctified individuals do not behave in such a way, and that these are not fully sanctified people. But I also think that people who are on the road to sanctification can respond to defend their neighbors, can respond to angrily to injustice, and that's what I largely see from Global Methodists is that they are not content just to sit and be attacked, but they want to defend other people who are being attacked, and they want to stand against a corrupt United Methodist bishop. So I've been a bit I understood myself to have a more sympathetic posture towards the violence than you. I wonder if these mitigating circumstances at all add texture, or if you really do think it's really as simple as Methodists are never violent. If we're violent, then our discipleship has failed.
Well, okay. So first of all, it's difficult for me to pinpoint who is so my approach
Mhm,
of reading. I read the situation as the Methodists, like long before there was the split between global Methodists and United Methodists, that there was these people who are global and united today, they were Methodists. So my analysis is considering that, right? That the way they have been living before has not certainly um, yielded a process of handling the crisis that has befallen them. They have not lived previously in a way that led them to handle the crisis in a Wesleyan way,
mm,
right? So that's regardless of, who Global or United Methodist sent the first shot and then who was responding angrily at the situation. And I'm doing that from the standpoint of, the expectation, the Wesleyan expectations of their congregation, I mean of their denomination,
mhm,
of the kind of, I mean, the expectation of the kind of people that they are, right, as Wesleyan. So if there was a consistent, like if the patient ferment was in the Christianity in the Christianity that they were living, I think they would have handled the situation in very different way
mhm,
than getting at each other, to the point of bleeding. Now that's not to in order to go your way a little bit, that's not to neglect the fact that these are issues that go also beyond individual hearts or personal sanctification. These are very structural issues,
mm,
and these are very organizational and institutional. For instance, some of the things that people got violent about there, those type of violence will not exist in the U.S. context. Not because the U.S. American Methodists are more sanctified than Nigerian
oh, you're
Methodists.
right. Yeah, you're right.
Just because the process is clearer here, the structural process, both at the level of the church and then at the level of the country, if you are in the US, what you do about this building, this seminary or this church building, it's well spelled out, right? And people, I mean, you go through the legal process and so forth. Nigerian people lack any. I mean, there was no, the rule about who does the building belong to, and
Mhm,
how does a building that was formerly a United Methodist building becomes a Global Methodist building? You guys have been, following those structures here because everybody knows it. Everybody has a buy-in into that.
mm,
Well, the level of understanding of that in Nigeria is very, fluffy. Right? So that where you get to you are seeing people, basing their responses on ethnic commitment, right? This is
mhm,
our leader, or geographical commitment, or amount of money that they have received, right? So this issue, to me, even if it is structural, it is also a problem of holiness, because in the Wesleyan sense, holiness is takes an institutional and structural approach. It's not just a heart condition issue. So lacking those things breed violence, right? And we should look at the issues in those directions too. Yeah.
I don't know how much you would disagree with me on this. I've had to look at the African context, why violence is more frequent than in the American context within the church. Why is it that it's the case? Your theory that you just articulated was that in the American context, the rules are much better defined. There's broader awareness of how things work. I, from my perspective, have seen a lot of I've seen, I think, as much confusion on the American side as the African side. Every annual conference dealt with it somewhat differently. Different leaders said different things. And I've noticed, Americans get angry about it, but I just think we're so over medicated, overstimulated, disorganized. We broke down tribal boundaries a long time ago. World War II, we just destroyed all that. I just don't think we mobilize like that anymore. I don't think Americans even know how to have an organized violent revolt or do anything like that. I feel like the media is pushing us to do that, but we don't even know how. Um, but when looking at Africa, it feels to me as though people are not over medicated yet. Tribal boundaries have been maintained, and there can be flashpoints where people act collectively together in ways that you don't see in America. Um, and Americans have a certain way of looking at that where it can be uncharitable. The way that I've looked at it is when you read about the early church, say the Donatist controversy, there was frequent violence among the Donatists in Egypt, and they were very faithful Christians, but they did not brook much dissent on the other side. They would torture, skin people alive on the other side, and you're going, how did Christians do this? But it seems to me as though, yes, the Anabaptist tradition has maintained nonviolence and non-retaliation very well throughout their tradition. But there have been many times and places where the church was quite violent, and that can be a huge bad witness for the church. But I also wonder if it can be a good witness because this is something that is worth fighting for. I think in America, our Christianity is, we're not going to hurt anybody about it. No big deal. Go start your own church. But when people are willing to be violent about it, it shows, no, this is something worth really, really shedding blood over. This is something worth really making the central focal point of our lives. So I wonder, sometimes I've looked at the violence in Nigeria among Christians as evidence that their faith is more real to them than perhaps over here. Is that a wrong-headed way to look at things?
I I will not. I mean, that's. I understand that interpretation of Christianity, but as I have come to believe, I mean, the myth of. I mean, some people call it the myth of redemptive violence.
Yeah.
I do not subscribe to that, but that doesn't mean, right? So that doesn't mean that the issues are not serious. That we need to fiercely. I mean, to me, instead of violence as a proof that something is right, I will talk about fierce conversation, right? We can have fierce conversation and not, get on each other's, especially physically. That the physically attacking you is a proof that my faith is serious. No, no, I don't see that as a characteristic of people following Jesus. I mean, the Lamb, Jesus, who asked Peter to do something else other than showing that he loves Jesus by cutting, the other person's ear, but fiercely disagreeing and fiercely, just like Peter and Mark, what are those two, Paul and
Barnabas.
who fiercely disagree, and yeah, and Barnabas. And the issue was so, I mean, if you read the language in the book of Acts about their disagreement, I mean, it was serious, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that one, yeah, that one I agree. But it doesn't have to get to physical violence. So if it gets to physical violence, to me, that's a violation of our Christian faith, and it's as far as it is defined by following Jesus.
Well, and
So,
see, you're just now
right, what
modeling
I
it
meant,
because
sorry,
you're fiercely disagreeing with me. Well,
yeah,
and granted, you can't be violent with me right now, but you're modeling what discourse should look like, where I articulated a position that you find really quite repulsive, but you're not saying this interview is over. I want nothing to do with you. You're bearing with
no.
me in love, and you're articulating an alternative vision with clarity. And so, this is exactly what people need to see. And thank you for bearing with me.
Yeah, yeah. And what I said earlier about the American contest is that, I know all I mean, I know, I don't want to say all, but I know the American contest a little bit because I have been a language interpreter at the last two general conference before the
Oh,
2019.
cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I know the nitty-gritty of the confusions about even the rules that are spelled out, misunderstood, and interpreted differently and so forth. And it's very chaotic, and I understand that. But what I meant to say earlier is that, rarely do you see that because of that chaos that people get on each other violently because
Yes.
there are contests for disagreeing fiercely. If it leaves the church contest, it goes to the courts, right?
Hmm.
And people wait, they gather documents and so forth. Uh, so as far as American Christianity or American Methodism is establishing themselves in African continent, I
Hmm.
think the context becomes different. That the waiting period, the 6 month waiting before you go to the court, right? People don't want to wait there. They just want to go and lock the door, take the
Yeah.
key, and then,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
And
I think it's very similar here I mean, having watched Liberia and Nigeria, very similar. It's going differently in each location. But here in America, long legal wait time, a lot of confusion, a lot of congregations saying, let's just take the building. What are they going to do? I've seen a lot of the same stuff mirrored from place to place. There's a legal system that's involved in places. There's documentation that they're tracking down in on all these locations. But in the end, there are some African locations where they say, let's just go raid this place. Let's just get our guys together and go raid this place. Let's go stand outside this church and do a big. Here in America, it rarely ever gets to that level, and this might be our only disagreement today. I really do think Americans are just too domesticated. I think Africans are just, at night they're still out and about. During the day, they still get out and talk. They're not all looking at their phones all day, every day. They're not on 5 different medications. They're not watching TV all day. Africans still get out and are gregarious and get to know one another. And I think that means that has great capacity for good, but it also has higher capacity for violence. Can we agree to disagree there?
Uh, yeah, yeah, probably,
Okay.
probably. I mean, my only concern is that so when you and I we belong to the community, I'm especially concerned by the fact that people have actually scheduled and planned to go and physically attack. So
Hmm.
within a span of 1 week, right? Even if my heart condition is leading me to do that, Are there structures in the Nigerian Methodism, right, both at the level of clergy, at the level of laity, where people actually they meet with each other and they say, right, like I was in my covenant group on Tuesday, and so those pauses, right, get you to tease your ideas, your plans in light of the state of your soul. Do people walk that way? I mean, are people doing those things in Nigeria, in Nigerian Methodism? To me, if they are, I think there will be a wise voice. There will be wise voices there that will say, instead of this, let's do this. Instead of this, let's do this. That doesn't mean that we lower our standard of faith or our
Mhm.
fierce disagreement. That doesn't mean that like if you are global Methodist, that doesn't mean that we accept the rules of same-sex marriage that the other side is. But there will be wisdom, right? In Africa, even without Christianity, when people come together, right, we say that there is the fruit of collective wisdom. I will be very surprised that there is a collective wisdom that actually will lead people to say, let's take our machetes and our bottle, let's take and then go hurt the other people. That's For me, that's more concerning to me
Mhm.
than anything else. That is that we are not having those pauses in order to check, right? In order to pray with each other, in order to say, how is it with your soul, what you have done or what you're planning to do. I believe strongly that if those type of processes, things will have gone differently. That doesn't mean that they will agree on the issue that they disagree about,
Mhm.
especially yeah on this subject matter. But there will be different processes that will emerge from the collective wisdom.
That sounds
Yeah.
fair. And I think you would be happy to know, I've been invited to sit on a couple different, Northwestern African WhatsApp groups, and there are many Nigerians on there, and there will be developments that just make them so angry, and then they will seek that collective wisdom. Elders will say, "No, brother, do not go that direction. Here's what we should do instead." They will calm each other down, they will minister to each other. So I think it is important for me just to speak from that. I'm more of a spectator. I'm not a participator. I'm not doing the as an American. I just think you should all do this. I don't really do that. But they don't need that. They're ministering to one another. And at least from where I'm watching, the only times that global Methodists have been violent have been unplanned and have been just reacting to planned violence against them. And I could be wrong. I'm not there in person. I could be believing propaganda, but that's at least the picture that I've seen. And that doesn't really affect the truth of what you offered. The truth of what you offered is that Christ like character does result in mutual understanding, forbearance, and not returning evil for evil. And I think that that is a clearly true thing to offer. And I think it was a very helpful thing for you to offer for global Methodism. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to articulate that and then bear with me as I clumsily make my way through the content. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close with you saying a prayer for the audience?
No, other than thanking you very much for taking particular interest in the article and for inviting me into to your platform, and thank your audience for listening, and thank them in advance for any feedback that they might have that will actually enhance the understanding of Christian faith that we share. I think that's very important, that we hold each other accountable to be on the road of Christian perfection. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy if you're soliciting feedback, then folks, if you email me at plainspokenpod@gmail.com, I'm very happy to forward that on to Sègbégnon, and you can have your own conversations from there. I'm sure a lot of you actually would like to hear and know more. So it sounds like you're in the position to help more than just me. So thank you for that. Would you close us
Oh,
with a prayer?
sure. Yes, I'm glad to do so.
Okay.
Gracious Father, thank you. Thank you for revealing yourself to us, and thank you for helping us understand that um, we are supposed to be the light of the world,
Mm.
and for giving us a structure within which this can be possible. In our world that is in chaos, we pray that your spirit will continue to move within us and to lead us to be different, to be unique and particular, so that we will not contribute to the chaos, but we will be people who are witnesses of another kind of order that you have brought on earth, the order of God's kingdom, um, that we can share among us and then beyond us. Thank you for this platform. Pray that you continue to bless your servant, Jeffrey, and all of those people who listen to him, that through these formal and informal education, that ministries will change, approaches to Christianity will be transformed, and that your name will be exalted among all people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Friends, this has been Sègbégnon Gnonhossou. You can find in the show notes, I'll have a link to his Firebrand article and any other resources that he sends my way. I want to thank those of you who spent the whole time trying to learn alongside me. Thanks for letting me be an interlocutor. Thank you for permitting me to say stupid things as we search for wisdom together. I love
No,
doing this. So thank you, Sègbégnon, for your patience with me, and I'll look forward to the next excuse we have to talk.
thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.